John Simpson, who is the Privacy and Technology Director at Consumer Watchdog. And we're just waiting for folks to set up and get on the line. Evans, tell Mark to raise a number of hands for callers we have on the line, just so I know how many we have. So give us a few minutes here just to set up. I'd say we're going to go in about 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. All right. So we'll go in 1 minute. We do have, for folks on the line, polling data online at consumerwatchdog.org on the front page. You'll be able to pick up the public policy polling that was conducted for Consumer Watchdog. And you can also get a polling memo as well from Jim Williams, the Public Policy Polling Director at Public Policy Polling. He will speak last. He's on the conference line. We do have some people in our office in Los Angeles. So we are going to do a press conference. John Simpson is going to speak, and then go through the results, and then Jim will comment on the methodology and anything we've missed or misstated, because he's the scientist. So we're going to get going. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks. I'm Jamie Court, and I am president of Consumer Watchdog, JAMIECOURT. Thank you for tuning in and coming. We're here today because, as you can see if you're here, there have been some tremendous and terrible crashes with autonomous technology. Just a day ago, a little bit more than a day ago, we had a crash and a death, and we believe it was a Tesla and autopilot. Just weeks ago, someone else died with a Tesla and autopilot. We had a crash as well in Arizona, Tempe, Arizona, where a pedestrian died crossing the road in what was fairly clearly a lack of peripheral vision by the vehicle that a human driver probably would have had, and certainly would have applied the brakes. This robot car did not even apply the brakes. So we've had a spate of deaths: China, Florida, Arizona, now in Northern California. And it's all because we are rushing to the road with robot car technology before it's ready. What's shocking is that legislators and the industry seem to think this technology is ready for the roads, but the public knows it's not ready. And that's what the polling today shows. As people take to the roads on Memorial Day, this polling shows the American public says, put the brakes on driverless cars. Robot cars are not ready for the road, not just because we're hearing about deaths, but because of the testing results we've seen in California, where many of these cars can't even go more than a couple hundred miles without failing. So the results we have today show definitively that Senate legislation that is poised to pass the Senate on the Senate floor does not reflect the will of the American people. The Senate legislation lets this technology rush to the road virtually unregulated, and yet 80% of Americans in this poll say that this technology should be regulated by the government. This poll was conducted in states where senators, Florida, Michigan, South Dakota, are very influential in this debate, and California, and yet these senators aren't listening to the will of the people. The people say, 3 out of 4 Americans say, driverless cars are not safe enough for them to drive in them, and yet this technology is being rushed to the road. So I'm going to let John Simpson, our Privacy and Technology Director, go through the results point by point, or the highlights of the results, and then we're going to hear from Jim Williams of Public Policy Polling, who's going to talk about the methodology for this poll, which we have both aggregate numbers from the 4 states. We have California-specific numbers. We have numbers for Florida, Michigan, South Dakota. But universally, the verdict is in from this poll that whether you live in South Dakota, Florida, California, or Michigan, you don't want to be in a driverless car until the technology gets better. You fear for your safety, and you also fear, by the way, for your privacy. This poll shows that a big part of the problem with driverless car is there is not enough privacy for the people who ride it and for the people who are observed by those cars. And it's a really important debate in California because we have 650,000 signatures that were just turned in for a ballot measure in California to require that technology companies like the ones making driverless cars have to tell the public what information they're collecting about them, that they can't sell that information without their permission, and if they have a data breach on that information, the public gets to sue them and hold them accountable. So for Californians who, 3 out of 4 Californians don't want this technology on the road, huge numbers do not want to see our data collected by these cars, don't want to see pictures collected by these cars, don't want to observe by these cars without limits. They have a chance, likely to vote in November, because it has to be certified for the ballot, on a ballot measure to stop that data collection practice among driverless cars. So Californians actually have a choice. For the rest of America, the choice is to tell the Senate to slow down on this debate. Don't rush this thing through, because the American people aren't ready and we need more deliberation. Don't just listen to the industry, listen to the people. So I'm going to give it over to John to talk about the specific results in the poll, and we'll let Jim walk you through the science of it all. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm John Simpson. I'm Consumer Watchdog's Privacy and Technology Project Director. Good morning. So, as Jamie was saying, we have both aggregate results and California-specific results. Again, this just, I think, tells us why we get the response that we get. Okay, so 80%, this is on the aggregate level, believe that government should regulate the driverless car technology. It should not be left to self-regulation by the industry itself, which is what they tend to be pushing for. This is the really tragic incident with Uber, where the woman was killed. That's video taken from that car itself, this stuff. So 74% say, this again is in the aggregate basis, they would not ride in a driverless car if it were available to them. So you have to ask, if people don't want them, why are they rushing them out there when they aren't even safe? In California, it's a somewhat slightly better, shall we say, for the industry. Here, it's only 69% of people that overwhelmingly say we wouldn't take these if they were offered. Some other findings: 77% of California voters are concerned about their safety if these cars are on the roads, even if they're not on them. They're concerned about being hit if they were pedestrians, or if they were a passenger, or if they were bicyclists. The aggregate total for that in the 4 is 79% are concerned. The 69% of California voters oppose something that the industry seems to be favoring, which is that if there is a crash brought about by one of these cars, that they would be forced to go into arbitration rather than being allowed to bring a case in court. In the aggregate, 75% don't like arbitration. 57% in California, aggregate of 59%, don't believe driverless cars will be safe enough to consider using during their lifetime. 75% of those in California and 80% overall think that the government should regulate the driverless car technology rather than allow industry to self-regulate. And 58% say that the loss of jobs, I mean, think about it a minute. Uber's out there trying to do this so they won't need drivers in their fleet. And think about what would happen if one of the best paid blue-collar jobs, that being a truck driver, what if that goes away? That's what is promised with this technology. 58%, both in California and nationally, are concerned about that job loss and thinks that there needs to be some sort of slowing of the deployment so that public policy can be adjusted to make up for that if these things are ever even successfully introduced. So that's the highlights, that's the top line. I think probably Jim, if you want to talk.
Well, let me just say one thing before Jim goes in. I think what's really key, just pulling back a second, is that again, 77% of Californians fear for their safety physically. 79% of Californians fear for their privacy. 8 out of 10 Californians worry about the data collected by driverless cars, and there is not a single line in that Senate bill to protect their privacy. Senator Feinstein has put a hold on that bill. She's opposed to it, but it is poised to ram through anyway, and we have not heard anything from Senator Harris, unfortunately. So I want to give it to Jim, but I want to say that, you know, in California, we have a chance to vote to protect our privacy from the driverless car companies, and we also have one senator who's standing up to these companies and actually preventing a Senate vote, but it's not enough. And I fear, and many of us fear, that despite this polling, we're going to see a vote soon. Jim, if you're there, can you take over on a little bit the methodology of the polling, and then maybe dive back into anything we miss, or if we have misrepresented anything, please correct us.
Oh yeah, he sounded good. I think one thing I wanted to point to, it kind of wraps up everything that's been discussed so far, and reiterate that in the aggregate data, 80% of respondents believe that the government should regulate driverless car technology rather than allow the industry to self-regulate. And one broader comment I want to make about these numbers, it's extremely rare in this day and age of polarization and disagreement to see such a extraordinarily high level of consensus on anything in a poll, let alone approaching 80–90%. It's almost unheard of to see such consensus around an issue such as the numbers that we see in these polls. But I wanted to talk briefly about the methodology that we use for these polls. Public policy polling surveyed a total of 2,374 registered voters in California, Florida, Michigan, South Dakota from May 15th to 16th. The margin of error for the overall data is plus or minus 0%. And the surveys were conducted using automated telephone interviews. That's some background on the methodology, and I'll open it up for questions now.
Let me open it up for questions because I have to open the line. Okay, I'm gonna open the line, but let me take any questions in the room before we go to any questions on the line. Okay, is there any question in the room before we? All right, someone's line is dialing. That's not me. Maybe I'll unmute for a second. Let me mute them while that takes itself out of consideration. Is there any questions in the room before I go to a question on the line? No? No one once? Going twice? Let me go to the line.
The participant lines are unmuted.
Is there any question in the room, on the phone line? If you could just, it's an open line, so if anyone wants to say anything, just say who they're, speak up, say what your name is, where you're from, and what your question is. No questions? Any questions? Going once? Okay. Well, John and Jim and I are available if people do want to ask questions, and you can reach us at 310-392